One thing I absolutely forgot to mention when I was talking about low effort maps was one technique that I used very extensively at one point in my gaming career, uh, and I still use today to a little bit of a lesser extent, and that is that. So when I was at Pitt and I was running a ton of games all the time, that's one of the places where the Bostonia concept got sort of solidified was that freshman year at Pitt. And the technique I would use to make that happen and play way too many games a week, as I was to simply use the environment and existing places, and then sort of mentally convert them in my to the fantasy to a fantasy adventurous place that I need. So and again, the concept of, hey, a ruined world, a ruined modern world becoming a fantasy world, Thundar the Barbarian, uh, um, a little bit of Shannara, although Shannara wasn't sort of themed around that. Bostonia, and my own Bostonia was based on sort of that concept, and I used it with a lot of buildings at the university, and so those first couple years playing in Bostonia, all those guys went through different buildings in the university. So when I got a job at the nuclear physics lab, there were so many things you could do in that building because it was just sort of an interesting, layout for the building. Now, today I don't use it. It's certainly not as literal, and I don't love. Most modern places don't have great layouts for dungeoneering, since dungeoneering tends to funnel you a tiny bit more. But we can sort of use it um, figuratively, as it were. So and in some cases we can go pretty literal. But so for instance, if I'm thinking, okay, let's do a trip down a river as sort of an adventure, and I can go through maybe the rooms in my house and figure out what the different encounters are, and so I can think, well, the entryway where there's all the coats and the coat racks and shoes and umbrellas and so on. Well, that could be a trading post, right? So we can jot that down. The room with the cat trees and the room where my son keeps his computer and sits in there all day. That can be high banks with rocks and overhanging trees where predators sort of watch over the river and wait to jump down. And then there's a hermit or maybe the Mad Cat King or something of that nature. The kitchen can become an area of plenty with berries or mushrooms that grow to provide abundant food, and so on, right? Or again, you could use the house even more literally. My house has sort of a weird square layout where it's effectively a continuous circle around a center area, and so you could make that the layout where you maybe come in the middle, descend down into the dungeon in the middle, and enter into one of these random rooms, and then have to do the loop, as it were, to get out. So again, shopping malls, tons of stores. You can take any store and go, okay, jewelry store. Well, that could become then a vault, right? Um, we had, there's a lot of, well, you walk into a McDonald's, but you don't walk into a McDonald's, of course. You don't go out and just say it. And again, that's a whole different issue and different take with specifically the world that I'm running. But again, I wouldn't be too literal. But you could easily picture like a temple where there's a seating area where the congregants come, and then a flame altar, but now's been overrun by little flame imps that reach into the pit and pull out burning gobs of hot oil and tar and hurl it at the players. And that's a pretty fun combat encounter then. and that's just a fast food joint, right? Um, so I truly think, I mean, my players recently went through, they called it, we called it the crypt of ice and rust, which was simply a rundown convenience store, um, but then made bigger and wackier, right? Obviously, we're not going to have a two-room dungeon, so I expanded that idea to about a dozen or so rooms, and then at the end, um, you know, they found the wand, which is an ice wand, but it has the side effect that it rusts metal in some large area over the course of time. That has nothing to do with a convenience store, but the idea it isn't that you literally use layouts or literally use encounters one after the other. It's that you get the starter seed going in your head, and then from there you can extrapolate. And so I've used this fairly successfully. Looking everywhere I go, I simply look and go, well, how can I twist this? Right? If I'm on a boring shopping trip, or if I am, oh, I'm out on a walk, and I think, how can I use this uh, in a dungeon, or how can I use this in a fantasy adventure setting? And then when I come back in, and then when I come back to the table, I'm using my neighborhood, or I'm using the local shopping mall, or I'm using my school, or whatever. And so I've used this to improvise lots of different places. And even if I'm not improvising, I use it to sort of generate my note sheet that I'm going to use when I have players entering a new adventure area. So that's the idea that I forgot. It's probably it might be the most important one in there, but that's it. I will talk to you all later. Thank you very much.